Well, my friends, my name is Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to provide context in the war in Ukraine. This morning, I want to paint a picture for you of what's actually happening. And I'm going to do that with the statistics. I'm going to do that with some commentary. But let's start here with 1420 Russian casualties day over day. Now, if you've been watching for some time, you would recognize that that's a fairly high number. The highest monthly average was last month, and that was 1,271 as an average last month. In the 1400s is very rare. I've only seen it in the 1500s, I think once, maybe twice, but I can only remember once. So that's high. And it's high because the Russians are trying to push right now while they know that they still can before it's too muddy or too cold in order to really press their advantage. Okay, 1420 Russians off the battlefield, 17 tanks, 33 armored fighting vehicles, 51 artillery systems, and 83 vehicles and fuel tanks. Now, I want to look at this tanks number. This is really interesting. They just passed 9,000 tanks that were destroyed since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. 9,000 Russian tanks have been destroyed by Ukrainian warriors since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. Only 1,000 left until we get to 10,000. I mean, like, think about that. Now, part of the reason that so many tanks have been destroyed is because we're not just in tank-on-tank warfare or artillery on tanks or missiles or whatever, but drones. And drones can get through and do miraculous damage. Like, think about drones. A $500 or $1,000 drone is crushing a $5 million tank. I mean, like, now again, the numbers, don't worry about the look. Think of the ratio in the numbers. Okay. Now, Andrew Perpetua was talking about this because people were talking about, well, why can't you just have drone defense that will knock them down? He says, I often wonder how counter drone systems work when the drone doesn't emit signals and is flying under the terrain and cannot be jammed. It seems like it's a hard problem to solve. Now, not all drones are like that, but drones have some really significant features that make them hard to swat down, and they can do a lot of damage without being really detected very easily. Okay, now 10,000 or 9,000 tanks. I wonder if Putin would have been thinking about this in the beginning of the war. 46 special military operations later. Remember, we're supposed to be a 3-week special military operation. So 967 divided by 21 is going to give us 46 3-week special operations back to back. I wonder if he's thinking, as he's going into this, I'm going to lose 9,000 tanks. That wasn't anywhere in his calculation. Like, he thought this was going to be quick and easy and never thought that he would be embroiled in this much later. I'm really sick and tired of everything going according to plan. Well, that's the line. Everything's going according to plan. No, it's not. Not by a long shot. And it's pretty obvious when you look at what's going on the ground. But now he's got to do something to press that. And let's look at this first. Andrew Perpetua's list, it's about 3-1. But you can see just by the size of this, it's not the 3-1, which is good. I'm glad to see a ratio of about 3-1. But the sheer number of losses here is pretty staggering, and that's telling you a story about just how hot it is on the battlefield. And then when we look at this, I don't normally do this, but I think it's worth doing right now. In the Kupiansk direction, Russian fascist invaders attacked 19 times. There are 9 battles ongoing, right? And they're showing all the places where it is. On the Bakhmut front in Donetsk region, the Russian fascist invaders made 3 failed attacks. In Pokrovsk direction, Ukrainian defenders repulsed 9 assaults by the Russian fascist invaders. And it goes on and on. Kherson region, I didn't even show you all of these. In Kherson region, in Dnipro direction, units of our troops successfully repelled 6 assaults by the aggressor's troops on our positions. And so I'm just going over one after another, so you can see, but it's all Russian momentum, all Russian attacks that Ukraine is defending against. In the Kharkov direction, Ukrainian defenders repulsed 26 attacks by Russian fascist invaders, right? So they just keep coming. Now, why are they doing this now? For the same reason that I just broke out my sweater vest. Okay, I happen to like sweater vests as a fashion statement, which is pretty terrible, except it works in college. And it's just cold enough right now that I'm starting to feel like I can put a sweater vest on. And so it's, yeah. And I'm in the American South. Now, in Ukraine, they're just getting to frost, which is just getting to mud season. And you'll see that they're making these aggressive, attacks now before they can't do that later. This is right now. This is Kupiansk all the way down to Kramatorsk, and so what you're seeing here. This is now, and this is 2 months ago. This is now, this is 2 months ago. They keep pushing a little bit forward because they know that they only have but so much time. Okay. And so that's how it is. Now, here, this goes right to Putin's theory of victory. Putin's current theory of victory, this is according to the Institute for the Study of War. Putin's current theory of victory in Ukraine seeks to protract the war and posits that Russian forces can outlast Western support for Ukraine and collapse Ukrainian resistance by winning a war of attrition. So they have to keep going, and they have to keep grinding the Ukrainians down. Pauses are actually bad for Russia. Now, I know people are like, well, a pause, that would be bad for Ukraine because Russia could rebuild. They could both rebuild. But pauses are going to be bad for Russia. Russia will likely face serious medium and long-term constraints that will undermine their strategic effort. However, how long can they actually keep this up? Well, again, here's part two. Putin's theory of victory relies on Russian forces conducting consistent offensive operations indefinitely. But these grinding assaults will likely degrade available Russian manpower. Remember, on the offense, you probably get a worse deal as far as casualties than you do on the defense. But since they have nothing but people, I mean, they have plenty of people, and they're going to have more with North Korea, it looks like, they keep doing this. And so they're grinding Ukraine down because they have more men, Russian manpower and material significantly enough that Russian forces will have to decrease offensive tempo on at least select sectors on the front, presenting Ukrainian forces with opportunities to contest and perhaps seize the battlefield initiative in these areas. So they have the initiative as long as they can keep putting the pressure on. But how long can they keep putting the pressure on? And see, that becomes the real question here. Now, mud season is here. Remember, I have the sweater vest on. It's cold where I am, even in the American South, and it's getting cold in Ukraine, and it's getting muddy. The frost seeps into the ground and creates the mud, and that's where we are. So the tempo is going to slow pretty soon, but right now it's still 1,400 plus a day today and 1,400 plus yesterday. Okay, that's where we are. A little bit more from the ISW. Medium to long-term constraints on Russian force generation capacity and Russian military industrial production will undermine Russia's ability to support consistent offensive operations that seek to protract the war and overwhelm Ukraine through attrition. Now, that's true, but they're regenerating through North Koreans that are apparently being trained right now, and they're also up against a different force, and that is winter. So we'll see how long they can keep doing what they're doing. It's an open question of how long they can sustain this effort. Okay, Gary Kasparov replying to Ben Hodges. Ben Hodges asks, when do we realize that they are at war with us and start fighting back, making the Russians pay for every aggression? It continues otherwise. He's spot on. It will continue because we haven't checked it. Kasparov replied, you cannot make peace unilaterally. That's called surrender. And that is what the West has been doing for decades now in the face of overt aggression. That's exactly right. I showed you this picture of the EU village and the dam that was Ukraine that's holding back the flood tide of Russia. But it's worse than that. It's not just the Russians that are in that flood. It's now the Russians and the North Koreans and the Iranians and, well, I think it might be a little unfair to say India, but India's at least purchasing power is driving it, and the Chinese. There's a lot that's about to break through unless it gets checked and this dam is supported. Okay, last little bit, and just like that, joining military alliances turned out to be okay. Darth Putin. All right, my friends, that's all that I have. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.